everyone, and thank you for watching this webinar about the recent changes in lender questionnaires, specifically Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. I'm joined by Phoebe Neseth, the Director of Government and Public Affairs and the College of Community Association Lawyers for CAI National, to discuss this topic and the resources available to community associations.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you on this topic today. My name is Phoebe Neseth. I work with CAI National's Government and Public Affairs Department. We oversee all legislative and advocacy efforts on behalf of the Institute. To start today's conversation, I would like to provide some background on where these lender questionnaires were developed. Following the Champlain Towers South condominium collapse in Surfside, Florida in June of 2021, government-sponsored enterprises such as Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae set out to make changes to their guidance that mortgage lenders must follow if they want Freddie and Fannie to guarantee and purchase their mortgages. The updated lender questionnaires are one of the results of these discussions that occurred last year. Lenders need to comply with the new Freddie and Fannie requirements to maintain underwriting or funding the volume of mortgages. These new requirements, intended to mitigate risk of losses for Fannie and Freddie, create a database of condominium and housing cooperative projects that are ineligible for guarantee or purchase by Freddie or Fannie Mac. Lenders will and have declined lending in condominium and cooperative projects with significant deferred maintenance or unsafe conditions, special assessments, insufficient reserve funding, or no reserve studies. I know Rebecca's now going to jump into the weeds a little bit on these new lender questionnaires.
Yes, thank you. To dive in deeper, I'm going to provide some background on the importance of lender questionnaires and how and why they've changed. In speaking with managers and board members since these questionnaires were updated at the beginning of 2022, many previously saw the questionnaires as a step in the process for a loan, but didn't stop to truly comprehend the impact of the answers. Only after more detailed questions were included did boards consider the risk banks assume when funding a mortgage for the owners within the community. This risk became very apparent after the partial collapse of the Champlain Towers South condominium in Surfside, Florida last June. Lenders, specifically Fannie and Freddie, reacted to this new heightened awareness of risk by adding questions to the existing questionnaires that left our industry in a whirlwind as we attempted to determine how to answer the questions. I want to pause for a moment and mention that while Fannie and Freddie have taken the lead to include questions like those on your screen, other banks have also started to adopt questions of similar nature. So let's review the questions that are now commonly seen, and then I'll pass the conversation to Phoebe to go over the data that CAI National has collected thus far concerning the impact of these questions on associations throughout the US, what associations can expect going forward, and the resources for those in need of assistance to determine how to answer the questions. Does your association have deferred maintenance? Are you aware of any major components that need substantial repairs? Are there any current or planned special assessments? And if so, why?
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And as Rebecca mentioned, since early 2022, CAI has been surveying and collecting data to better understand the impact these new requirements have on condominiums and housing cooperatives throughout the United States. Hundreds of community association professionals and CAI members have been surveyed to help inform CAI and our team of the impacts of these new lender questionnaires. I want to go over a few of the data points collected just to really show the impact these new lender questionnaires are having on different professionals within our industry. 90% of the professional respondents to these surveys represent condominiums, and about 10% represent cooperatives, just to paint the picture of the respondents of this survey to date. 72% of respondents who answered the survey have experienced an impact by these updated lending guidelines at this point in time. And about a quarter of these respondents have indicated that they've experienced a lender denial due to these issues related to the questionnaire, not concerns related to condominium safety of this quarter of our respondents. Finally, I'd like to note that 30 to 40% of respondents to our survey to date have indicated they've experienced significant delays in lender approval due to challenges related to the new questions for condominium safety that Freddie and Fannie have put out. Once we started gathering this data at the beginning of the calendar year, we Also, we're working on legislative and advocacy initiatives at both the state and federal level through our government and public affairs team. And I would like to lay out a few of these initiatives that we've been working on since the end of 2021, when these initial lender questionnaires were published. These initiatives actually date back to June of 2021. Following the tragedy in Surfside, Florida, CAI's government and public affairs team and volunteer advocates began conversations regarding condominium safety and the future of policies on this topic with agency employees at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, as well as Freddie, Fannie, and FHFA. These conversations allowed CAI to further develop professional relationships with these agencies during the early condominium safety discussions that were going on last summer. As these lender questionnaires began to roll out, we were able to leverage and engage these professional relationships we had made at these federal agencies, and we're able to hold a webinar at the end of January with Freddie and Fannie representatives, as well as a few of our condominium association attorneys from across the country and CAI members. This webinar is available on CAI's website for any CAI member, and it really is just a discussion between the federal agencies and our attorneys explaining how to review and go through these new lender questionnaires and a little bit of the reasoning behind these questionnaires at the time. While we were working on this webinar and continuing discussions with these federal agencies, CAI's Federal Legislative Action Committee began a number of efforts to engage these federal agencies from an advocacy and lobbying perspective. Our federal lobbyists, as well as our Legislative Action Committee, continued outreach to representatives with Freddie, Fannie, and FHFA during this time to try to really offer themselves as resources to these agency professionals as experts in this industry. At the end of February, on February 17, 2022, CAI sent a letter to the Federal Housing Finance Agency, FHFA, requesting that implementation of the temporary Fannie and Freddie guidelines be suspended for 1 year. While the suspension has not yet occurred, CAI continues to offer our experts to these agencies as resources to utilize as they continue to navigate implementation and improvement of these lender questionnaires. While CAI's Federal Legislative Action Committee really has been leading the efforts on this, many of our state legislative action committees have been a part of the conversation and have been helping with outreach to each of their respective congressional delegations. In letters to many state congressional delegations, our state CAI legislative action committees have urged them to speak with these FHFA representatives as well, asking them to suspend these new lender questionnaire guidelines for, again, that 1 year period of time as we continue to navigate and improve these questionnaires. So we're working on these types of initiatives at both the state and federal level and continue to do so. As we mentioned earlier, we've been over the last few months surveying our members to really grasp a data impact of these lender questionnaires. We're continuing to survey our members, and we'll continue to put out the data we've collected. And we're continuing to share this data with the professional representatives at these federal agencies to explain the negative impacts these lender questionnaires are having on our industry. And of course, as all of this is going on, our CAI advocates are reaching out to different professionals and agencies as well, explaining these issues. I know I've just gone over a few resources that CAI has to offer our members on this topic. I would like to also just really spotlight a few more. On caionline.org/condominium safety, we have a guidance document to help our members navigate these new temporary requirements backed by Freddie and Fannie for condominium and housing cooperatives. It's a 17-page document, and it really breaks down the difference between each of the lender questionnaires. I encourage anyone to go through this document at this time if they're being impacted by these questionnaires. Again, our survey, please, if you're continuing to experience any type of impact by these questionnaires, keep taking the survey and letting us know these updated data points. And finally, as it shows by us being here today. Our government and public affairs team is always here as a resource, and our chapter executives are also here as a resource to help our members on these important government and public policy issues as well. So please contact our team at government@caionline.org at any point in time if you have questions on this topic. So with all of this being said, I'd like to pass it back to Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Phoebe. Thank you for joining me for this discussion. The Chesapeake chapter greatly appreciates the efforts of CAI National on this topic, and we look for avenues to continue to contribute information and help educate and advocate for the communities we serve.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for including us. And as I mentioned, we're always here as a resource, so please do not hesitate to contact anyone at our office on these topics.
And thank you for viewing this seminar. We hope you found it informative. Please reach out to CAI National or the chapter with questions, comments, or if you have any ideas for future topics on another seminar that you would find helpful. So thank you so much, and goodbye for now.
Thank you.